This is Me, I Am Mental, the podcast. A quick disclaimer. The content you find here is neither intended to be therapy or diagnosis. It is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us yet again on another episode of Me, I Am Mental, the podcast, where we discuss all things mental. Our aim is to provide factual, credible, useful, and engaging information on mental health. Today, I'm very, very excited to be joined by Dr. Chitayi Murabula. Dr. Chitayi Murabula is a psychiatrist, and currently he is the chair of the Kenya Psychiatric Association. We will get to know a lot more about him in due course. We will be discussing in detail the role of the Kenya Psychiatric Association in enhancing mental health, as well as, time permitting, the theme of next month's mental health campaign, which is going to be run by the Kenya Psychiatric Association, which is violence and mental health. My name is Charles Adede. And before we proceed, I just have a bit of housekeeping to do. Today, I happen to be alone on the set, hosting this by myself. My co-host, Darren Collins, has buggered off to the US to sort out a few personal issues. So I'm trying to fit into his very large shoes. He actually wears, I think, size 14 on a light note. But yes, so we have a request to make. We are still new in this space. We do believe we are engaging in something very, very useful, which is to normalize conversations around mental health, which is the new frontier on health issues as far as we are concerned. We always emphasize the fact that we really aren't experts. What we are just trying to do is create a platform where more and more people can engage on mental health issues positively. And we hope that in the process, we too are going to contribute a thing for the betterment of society. Now, our request to our audience is that you subscribe to our channel, as well as follow us on social media, and share very, very widely this content we have, and engage with us in terms of your comments, your questions. If you do want to participate as a guest in this forum, you can also reach out to us. Remember that a place where you can find a lot of other resources is our website, which is www.meammental.me. I'm the one who came up with that very, very clever URL. Without much further ado, I would like us to jump right into the meat of this conversation. Firstly, we would like to introduce Daktari, or is it Doktari in that Kenyan style? But we would like Doktari himself to just tell us a bit about himself, beginning from, alitoka wapi, alilelewa wapi, ilikuwaje he became a Doktari, and then as a Doktari, why psychiatry? Daktari, welcome to the set. And yes, it is very, very good to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for the work you're doing on Me I'm Mental. And it's a good job because mental health stories are few, and the need for awareness is big. So this is good work.
Thank you. Yes. So tell us a bit about your personal story. We're Kenyans. Kenyans always want to know, this person sitting here, is he married? Where did he come from? All that sort of thing.
Okay, to get that out of the way, I'm married. The rest will be useless.
The rest of it is useless. Okay.
But I was born in Kakamega County,
Yes.
firstborn, schooled in 3 primary schools, starting in Mumias, lower primary, did some schooling in Karura SDA in Nairobi, then Mumias Central, then high school, I went to Alliance High School. I'm sorry to say.
You're one of those guys.
Yes, and so from there, I went for my bachelor's at University of Nairobi, where I did a bit of student politics during the time of the late Professor Magoha, where the guys used to give him trouble at the university when he was our VC. But our time, which was between 2004 and 2009, was unique in that it was the longest running period without strikes and a university closure.
I remember that.
So it was sort of a golden age of the university. and after that I went into practice medicine, but then I went back into activism even as a young medical doctor. So I began mobilizing together with some friends, and we ended up forming the Doctors Union, the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union. We formed it in 2011, following a long history of a long struggle, really, of trying to convince the policymakers and the big people in the country that doctors deserved a union. Previously, there was a rule that doctors offer essential services, and therefore they should not unionize. So it was a sort of a struggle, but we succeeded. Formed the union, went on strike immediately. and the rest is really history, but the union itself, one of the greatest achievements to date has been that we have been able to stem the brain drain, the massive brain drain that was there previously, before doctors could unionize. I remember, right now, we have an excess of doctors who are not employed. Well, the need is still there, but the government is unable to employ them, or it claims to be unable. When it was the opposite, the government could not find enough doctors to employ. But it's because there was a slight improvement in our working conditions and the whole aspect of welfare of doctors. Obviously, there's a long way to go. But that was the history, and so somewhere in between, then I also decided to go back to do my master's in psychiatry at the University of Nairobi again, and I finished around 5 years ago. My master's, and I was given some responsibility to lead the Association of Psychiatrists, which I'm grateful for. That's my brief personal story.
So interestingly, because of all specializations, why did you settle on psychiatry?
Yeah. So for someone who is observing the journey of a doctor from outside, they may think that making the decision to study psychiatry is a momentous decision.
Yes.
For us who are in medicine, making that decision is an ordinary thing you do. It's like the way you wake up and say that today, I'll eat skuma or I'll eat kunde.
It's an interesting way of putting it, yes.
Yeah, it is a choice. These choices, we make them. Well, you could develop some passion as you go through medicine.
Yes.
And as when you are in first year in medicine, we are told that as you go through the school of medicine, there'll come a moment when something will strike you. Either it may be happiness or sadness, but when that moment comes, you'll realize that this is what I must do. If you're in a pediatric ward, then you become a pediatrician. If you are in theater and you almost a voice almost calling you.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it never happens to most people. So for me, the decision to do psychiatry happened because as a medical officer, I got posted to Mathare. That posting usually happens. It's one of the postings, the places you can work as a medical officer. So that exposure, just gave me the interest to study psychiatry. And that's how I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So very quickly, like in relation to that, to be honest, many Kenyans do confuse, what's the difference between a psychologist, a psychiatrist? What do they bring to the table when it comes to services?
So the brain and the human body, really, it's so complex, super complex, that you need many hands, many specialties to just deal with the human body. So you find someone who has just specialized in hormones, for instance. We call them an endocrinologist. You find another one who just specializes in the eye, and we call them an ophthalmologist. Such specialization, dentists,
Yes.
Very limited, ear, nose, and throat. So these specializations happen because history, lessons that we've learned over the journey of medicine is that it's too complicated for one person. And even these specializations continue and become subspecializations. All right? So for the brain, which I can say is what makes us uniquely human. All right, some people may say, okay, we walk on 2 feet, but chicken also, they walk on 2 feet. So it's not really us walking on 2 feet that makes us human. So it is the brain, the complexity of our brain is what really makes us human. The fact that a human being can think, they can control their emotions, they can imagine, create stories, tell stories, have a language. Actually, humans are the only people who truly have a language, or a complex language. The other forms of languages are very simple in the other animals. So complex language, it's because of it's about the complexity really of our brain, not even the size, because elephants have bigger brains than humans. So it's actually the complexity of our brains that have led us to develop. So all this development that has happened, interestingly, historians and biologists say that the advancement in the human person from the person who lived in the jungle has happened in the last 70,000 years only. It's recent.
Yes.
Compared obviously to the history of the earth.
Yes.
Yeah, which is millions of years. So the brain, in short, is so complex that you also need many specialties. For example, in neuroscience, we have several specialties. You have neuroanatomists who dissect the brain and study the various parts. They tell you that this nerve arises from here, its function is this, it joins with this and goes to this and that place. They study the different parts of the brain, different functions, and so on. You have neurosurgeons who operate. They can operate to remove a tumor, to remove an abscess. They can operate to remove some ailment within the brain. And then you have neurologists, who treat diseases that have to do with sensation and movement, that affect the brain. Then you have psychiatrists who originally, our history is that we used to treat diseases of the mind. So a psychiatry is made of 2 words, psyche and iatry, which means iatry means treatment. Anywhere you find that word, iatrogenic, arising from you being in the hospital. So there's something like iatrogenic infection, an infection you get when you're in the hospital. And psyche originally meant the soul, which later now means, if you say psyche right now, people say that's the mind. which obviously it has had many connotations in the past, but now it is known that the mind is a function of the brain. Mind functions are functions of the brain. So the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist, the differences are many. I've outlined 10 such differences on my social media pages. Okay. It was my first post this year.
Okay.
The first post, I did 10 differences between a psychiatrist and a psychologist. So if you check Chitayi Murabula on social media, you'll find these differences. But to simplify it and give you just a bit of the differences is that a psychiatrist, the background is in medicine. So they come into practice as doctors. So psychiatry is one of the specialties. Psychology, which means study of the mind, their specialty is in human behavior. All right? How can we modify human behavior? That's the big question of the psychologist.
The psychologist, yes.
For good, really. And science generally is very positive. So we want to modify for good. Obviously, there is always some bad. There's always some bad.
Yes.
But the goal is for good.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is when you say science is positive, there is an argument about science that it is generally it has no ethics.
Yeah.
Science is about discovery. You can discover anything. Yeah. The ethical issues sort of tend to come in a little later, which is part of
probably pure science.
Is more
pure science.
Yes.
Pure science. But I will again say it's an ethical, but it's more focused on
just
discovering new things, isn't it?
Yes.
But the applied branches, which become professions, every profession has its own ethical boundaries.
I see. Yes. Yeah. No, that was actually just an aside.
True. I mean, it's important. Look.
Yes.
Even in these sciences of the mind, the origin, for example, of public relations and advertisement, came from the US. Yeah. So some gentleman invented the idea that human beings can be made to buy things they don't need.
Yes.
All right. So that was the beginning of actually public relations and advertisement, that you can change people's mind on a large scale and make money. The guy whom I actually can't remember the name, but he was a cousin of Sigmund Freud. So that's how we remember him.
So you have Sigmund on one hand, trying to
do the positive
to
stuff.
do the positive, while this other guy uses the same tool.
Yeah, was trying to. Yeah, I mean, for him, he went commercial.
Yes.
And that's the origin of adverts that don't make sense. You see an advert and what does it got to do with this? Why is the lady doing and you're selling the house? Those kinds of adverts. Yes. It is. They have a psychological connotation. Anyway, but back to the psychiatrist and psychologist. The psychiatrist and the psychologist, they work in one team.
Yes.
Yeah. Primarily, the psychiatrist sees the patient first. Okay. Primarily, in a setup. The psychologist can also see the patient first, but generally, the psychiatrist will see the patient first, and then they will come up with a plan of management. So in this plan of management, the reason why someone, for example, may have depression may be because of a psychological reason. Yeah. It is because they have there's something called automatic negative thoughts. It's an example. They have automatic negative thoughts. So these automatic negative thoughts are leading them to be depressed. Yeah. So one of the treatments can be that you want to change that to be from automatic negative thoughts. You want to remove those thoughts, all right, and replace them with more realistic thinking. Thoughts are thinking, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You want to replace it with more realistic thinking. So instead of thinking that, anything can be interpreted negatively if you want, isn't it? Yeah. So you meet someone and you greet them and they don't greet you. You can easily say that this person is belittling me, is doing this to me, but you forget the alternatives, that he may be busy, he may be going through something difficult or having a bad day. Ama amenyeshewa asubuhi.
Or they didn't even see you.
Or the person met a difficult policeman on the traffic, in the traffic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so
or he didn't have his coffee.
or he didn't have his coffee.
Yes.
So all that the psychologist will help. Yeah, so there are therapies.
So what happens is it's you as a psychiatrist who is able to make the assessment during your initial interaction with this person.
Yeah.
That this person has come to us and they are presenting with this situation, and I figure that part of what could assist him includes sessions with a psychologist to help him now manage that aspect.
That aspect, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Which includes mostly talking therapies.
Yes.
Or talking treatments,
Yes.
One of them is the most common one. The one people know most is counseling.
Yes.
Which is also totally misunderstood.
Okay.
So for example, people just think that if you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you're going there for counseling, which is wrong,
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, counseling is a form of talking therapy, which is usually very short.
Okay.
Targeting one problem. For instance, if you fail in your exam and you are distressed about it, you go for counseling. If you lose a loved one and you're distressed and you'll always be distressed, you go for counseling.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're having a court case and you're stressed, you go for counseling. That's counseling.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
But the other therapies, like cognitive behavior therapy, are actually a bit more complex, because counseling is very brief, maybe just taking 1 week. At most.
Yes.
Yeah, but cognitive behavior therapy will take up to 8 to 12 weeks or sometimes longer.
Okay.
So you see, it's a very long.
Yeah.
It's because changing human behavior is very difficult. So it's while counseling is targeting at you just coping with this problem. Simple problem that you have. It may be simple, but you just want you to cope with it. Solve this problem, but a more complex psychotherapy will be targeting at you changing a form of behavior, a pattern of thinking, a belief. Beliefs, negative beliefs are very difficult to change. Even beliefs about yourself. Once you believe that you are a failure, changing that can take even 3 years.
Agreed.
It's not easy to change that, and because there are always things that you've confirmed over time. Maybe because you've passed through some tragic events and so on. So the approach of a psychologist is usually to talk to you, to change a pattern of thinking or a pattern of behavior. And even, a pattern of thinking or a pattern of behavior, While a psychiatrist, the approach is more from a medical perspective. There's very little difference between how a psychiatrist, for example, will approach your illness, and how an orthopedic will approach your illness. There's a lot of more similarity. Because when you come, the first thing we'll take history.
Perhaps you want to explain what an orthopedic
An orthopedic surgeon
is
a doctor who specializes in treatment of diseases of the bone.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
basically the approach of the psychiatrist will mostly be from a medical perspective. You are coming. Why do people come to hospital? It's because of pain or dysfunction. So you've come with this complaint, be it headache. You say, okay, I'm now feeling that, this headache is not going away. So we do history, what is this headache about and so on. Then we do examination. So we do physical examination and we do mental status examination. And then from there, again, we can form a clinical opinion about what the illness may be. But often we'll go ahead and investigate. So because a headache can be for many reasons. In proper setups, mostly if someone comes for specifically headache, probably they'll pass through a general practitioner. So they have done some tests already. But if they have not been done, we will do investigations. So we'll check for blood sugar, we'll check for blood pressure, we'll check for thyroid hormone and other hormones, we'll check for infection. That's the approach, because you don't want to start treating someone for anxiety and they have a heart problem.
Yes.
Yeah, so we rule out all that. Okay. So that is part of the work that the psychiatrist does, to make sure that you rule out a medical cause for this. Once you've ruled out, then we say, okay, let us now treat you. You have depression. And then for treating you, we may give you medication. So a psychiatrist prescribes, a psychologist does not prescribe. We'll give you medication. And we may or may not send you for psychotherapy. But for some mental illnesses, psychotherapy is extremely useful. So you'll find it is part of the package of treatment.
So if I hear you correctly, it means that how do you determine when you're sending someone for psychotherapy and when it's not necessary? Is it when, for instance, you recognize that this illness might just have maybe, quote unquote, a physical cause? This person is going through something because of just a physical cause, as opposed to a situation that is, like you say, a long-standing problem with certain thoughts. How do you make that decision, when to send them, when not to send them?
When to send them to a psychologist and when not to send them to a psychologist.
And is it generally the case that you send them? Do you work very closely with psychologists? Yes,
it's almost always the case.
Okay.
It's almost always the case that someone will be sent to a psychologist to provide psychological support. Most of the mental illnesses will require that. There are some illnesses where psychological treatment may not help the person, because they cannot engage in psychological treatment. For example, if someone is having what you call psychosis, severe mental illness, hearing voices, they're having all these abnormal beliefs. If they are having severe, then they'll not be able to engage with a psychologist. Any form of very severe mental illness, the first line of treatment will be medication. If it is severe. And then if someone stabilizes, then we identify some things that can need intervention psychologically. That's when we send. But there are some diseases that ordinarily a psychologist is almost always there. A good example is depression and anxiety. So in most cases, someone with anxiety or depression or post-traumatic stress disorder, they will be treated by both a psychiatrist and a psychologist at the same time.
Okay. Yeah. And are there instances when you also sort of engage like a neurologist, a neurosurgeon? Are there instances of interface between psychiatry and what would be examples of that?
Exactly. Like if a 73-year-old man comes to my clinic having been referred because of bizarre behavior, memory loss, and lack of sleep for 2 weeks. And then after examining them, I find, they're having all this that may reflect a mental illness. I take them for an MRI. I find that they have a tumor that belongs to a neurosurgeon.
And that's how you pass
it.
Refer. Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So now I want us to move a little to, again, just in that same space, I want us to have, firstly, maybe just for the benefit of our viewers, like I'd said, the Kenya Psychiatric Association, in parentheses is brackets, KPA, we'll be having a month-long mental health awareness campaign in the month of May, and the theme is violence and mental health. I think we will ask at some point before we will ask Daktari to just highlight some of the events or and that they have on the program. But yes, just highlighting that, I think it is for me. I feel very warm when when I hear about such campaigns, because that ties in very well with what we are attempting to do here. And hopefully during that campaign, we may also have a thing or two to contribute as Me I'm Mental. But what I want us to move to now is Kenya Psychiatric Association. We just want to know a bit about how the association came about, who its members are, what the association is hoping to achieve, just that, a bit about that.
Yes, so every profession requires a bit of fellowship within the profession. And this fellowship is supposed to set guidelines, uphold standards, be able also to keep out quacks, and support its own members so that they practice at the highest level. And if you don't do that, then other people will come from outside to try and control your profession. It's sort of a first principle for professionalism. So obviously, at some point, we had very few psychiatrists in Kenya. And historically also, psychiatry used to be part of internal medicine. Yeah, so probably we moved together with the physicians, right? But then we grew, got to a sizable number, and then we decided to form an association called the Kenya Psychiatric Association in 1986. Okay. By our founding fathers, hopefully your mothers were there, I don't know, but I think mostly founding.
In the spirit of gender parity.
And hopefully, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so in 1986, that's when they formed the association. Of course, the two main objectives was to promote the field of psychiatry in Kenya. So that's more of the inward looking. How do we ensure that we have good guidelines, we have good standards of practice, and also we also link up to to other similar organizations outside Kenya, Uganda Psychiatric Association, World Psychiatric Association, and so on, and participate in the affairs of such organizations and do research and all that. Then also promote mental health in the country. So educate the public, give advisory to the government on emerging issues like COVID-19. We gave an advisory, like school mental health, give an advisory on such issues of importance. And then also advocacy, so that we can have leaders investing in mental health. We can have progressive laws and so on. So promoting mental health in the community, so more outward facing. So those were the two main objectives. We usually break them into more, but those are the two main reasons why KPA was formed in 1986.
And so how was, in a manner of speaking, what are some of the things you've been able to do? Or firstly, before you... I've always wanted to know in terms of the numbers of psychiatrists,
yes,
vis-a-vis like the Kenyan population. It does seem to me like the field of psychology and psychiatry, just mental health, is very underserved. I don't know whether that impression is accurate. So what do the numbers look like? And are many doctors interested in joining the field? Just speak a bit to that.
Okay, so I'll speak to that. Let me just first tell you about membership.
Yes.
Who can become a member of KPA? So we have what you call full members or full membership, who are psychiatrists, those with first degree medicine and a master's in psychiatry. Then we have associate members. So associate members are professionals who are practicing in mental health. So we have psychologists, psychiatric nurses, occupational therapists, social workers. We also have medical officers who are doing their work involves mental health. So all those are associate members. We have affiliate members. affiliate members are like the young psychiatrists. They are doing their master's programs, and so they are going to become psychiatrists in future. So those are affiliate. Then we have corporate membership. So any organization that is doing work in mental health, either advocacy, awareness, providing services, can become a member of Kenya Psychiatric Association. Then we have others like honorary, you know, if you are prominently doing mental health work.
Yes.
So I encourage you to work really hard.
We will get
you
honorary
become very
membership.
popular.
Yes.
You become honorary.
So we have a
members
target.
of KPA. But in the meantime, we are open to corporate membership.
There is that as well.
There's that.
Okay.
So psychiatrists.
In terms of corporate, could you explain that? So who would be your corporate members in this case? Would they be like institutions like hospitals or who?
Yes, as long as it's an organization, it can be a CBO, it can be an NGO, it can be a company which is doing mental health work. They can join KPA.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, in terms of members, so we are about 150 as of now.
And that would be individuals or just all globally?
Yeah, that's all, even including those who are in Mississippi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're among the 150.
Yes.
Those who are working for government are about 60 in number.
Okay.
A good number tend to be within Nairobi.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So the ratio, the ratios usually are high in Nairobi. So for example, in Kenya, it's roughly 500,000 population. Then when you go away from Nairobi in rural areas, it's as low as 1 in 3 million people. In Kenya right now, we have about 24 counties with psychiatrists, which will mostly reflect that there is some level of mental health services present, and the rest don't have a psychiatrist.
Okay.
So again, that means that almost half of the country still does not have a psychiatrist. The story is not doom and gloom.
Okay.
The story is not
glad
doom
to
and
hear
gloom.
that. Yes.
Over the last 10 years, the pattern has been that the number of doctors who are coming into psychiatry is increasing. The appeal of psychiatry has increased. And I think it's because stigma has reduced. So let us continue reducing stigma. Okay. if we continue discriminating people with mental illnesses, if we continue making mental health the butt of jokes,
Yes.
If we continue talking negatively about Mathare Hospital, doctors will not come to train as psychiatrists. And by the gains can be reversed. That's what we've learned.
Oh, yes,
you can,
I know.
You can make
I've
10 steps ahead and make 20.
Look at the field
backwards.
of politics.
Yeah.
Look at even globally, even in spaces where you never imagined, like sometimes I look at what's going on in a country like the US, and I'm unable to recognize like my idea of the US in the past and who they are today. So gains can be reversed.
Yeah, gains can be reversed, and it is very unfortunate, because you don't want to go that direction. It goes against the human philosophy of growth and development.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the story is that the number of psychiatrists is increasing because the number who are coming to school to study is increasing.
Okay.
And the same story does apply to psychiatric nurses, does apply to psychologists as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so we can say we are on an upward trajectory. So if there's continued support, then we'll get there. I mean, for what I see as the negatives, and sometimes there can be many, but the two things I can point out is that actual investment in mental health is still very low, extremely low, below 1%. Yeah, and counties never really owned mental health when we went for devolution. Counties never owned the idea that mental health conditions are treated at Mathare, and Mathare is a national hospital, made some governors to imagine that mental health is a national function.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And so you find some counties are doing very little, to be honest. So investment, both at national and county level, has not actually happened, But we've created good policies. Kenya now leads this continent in terms of policies in mental health. I can give you examples.
Okay.
We're one of the few countries with a mental health policy in Africa.
Yes.
We also have mental health plan of action for the next 5 years. It's somehow new. We have a strategic suicide prevention strategy, also launched in 2022. Suicide prevention strategy. Very few countries have a suicide prevention strategy.
Yes.
The UN, the WHO, UNDP, Ministry of Health came together again around 2021-22 and developed what is called a mental health investment case. That why should you invest in mental health? It was found that there's actually an economic sense in investing in mental health.
Interestingly, because we hosted Honorable Sylvia Kasanga, who was instrumental in facilitating the enactment of the Mental Health Amendment.
Act. Yeah, even our law.
She actually did mention that study you're talking about, the one that pointed to a case, a real sort of economic case for investing in mental health.
Yeah, because in 2021, it was found that we lost about 56.6 billion Kenya shillings because of mental illnesses, the effects of mental illnesses, which you can say underproductivity at work, absenteeism from work, and early death due to mental illness. Suicide and the other illnesses. So the point is, at policy level, there is policy. We have good policies. Sometimes even I see what one can interpret as goodwill.
Yes.
Yeah, I see some good statements coming out of leaders about mental health.
Yes.
Yeah,
and that's a good place.
They say very nice things. I've listened to parliamentary debates on when a mental health discussion is going on.
Yes.
Some of them come and give personal stories. Oh, my brother had this and that. But when it comes to real action, for example, decriminalization of suicide.
Yes.
We are still lagging behind.
Yeah.
A very simple law. England is our role model. They decriminalized suicide in the 1960s.
So I suppose maybe some of it could also be something to do with where we are at in terms of religion and some of those things. They hold us back a bit.
It's quite unfortunate.
Sometimes I think I remember there was this debate about I can't remember was it Chitayi who was cremated. He asked to be cremated at death, and I was surprised at the uproar. People were saying it's very unchristian.
Yes.
So I think sometimes people are shy.
People are shy
to take on certain positions because
But the thing is, it is unfortunate when science is at odds with the law. When our law is old and does not take into account what is known now. If as human beings we continue ignoring what we now know, what other humans know, then we remain in the past. We lag behind.
There is yes. That tension is unnecessary.
Yes,
absolutely.
So we change laws to conform with what humanity now knows. Humanity now knows that suicidal behavior is a result of mental illness. That's what humanity now knows. So criminalizing it is the same as punishing someone who is sick.
Yeah, agreed.
It's as absurd as punishing someone who limps because they have a fracture of their leg.
I know.
It's that absurd. I know. Why are you limping?
I know. Yeah. Okay.
That's a challenge.
So, when it comes to the numbers again.
Yes.
And you say it's generally a positive story there.
Yeah.
But we do still have this situation. I particularly shudder when I think about rural Kenya and what is happening there when you think, for instance, in spaces where alcoholism has now taken hold and there is, or all these issues going on in rural Kenya, and there's nobody really, it doesn't feel like you say when you talk about investment in mental health, there would be investment in terms of now dealing with the people who are already ill, but there is also investment in just preventing people from getting ill in the first place through measures like maybe awareness and other more localized arrangements to just build the resilience or understanding of ways of coping. What is your take around that?
Mental health Mashinani.
Yes, mental health Mashinani.
Yeah.
I just feel like, guys, does it feel to you
even
like
these conversations to an extent may not reaching Mashinani
there, yes,
but in certain respects they're also reaching in certain places.
Okay.
But you need a champion. You need a champion who is leading these discussions. So the champion it could be non-governmental organizations, who are leading these organizations have been to a place in this country, in a rural area. Actually, it was Kilifi. I'm shy. I'm a bit hesitant to say.
Kilifi's name has been Kilifi's
because
name.
of what is going on. I'm a bit hesitant to mention, but it was Kilifi. About a month ago, before all these things started, and I listened to the conversations, and I found that the people in Kilifi, rural, were quite informed about mental health because of the work an NGO called Basic Rights was doing there.
Okay.
They have educated these people. They have champions within the community who talk about people with lived experience. They talk about the experiences, and turning around the notion that this mental illness is a result of a curse or a spirit.
Yes.
Turning around that. So very good work, going on in that area. So you find. But it's true to say that NGOs are quite limited in what they can do.
What they can do, yeah.
Na hiyo primarily si kazi yao. The work of educating the people and taking care of their health lies with the government. So NGOs can support kidogo too and even create models, but government must try to upscale them. Yeah. Pick these models, upscale them, replicate them in different places so that people can benefit. So county governments must own the mental health agenda, and then institutions that are functional like schools, where we have captive audiences of students.
They're the best places.
They're the best places to create influence that is positive.
Okay. So thank you very much around that. Now, I wanted us to take a bit of time to discuss the theme of violence and mental health. But before that, I know this is very topical, and you mentioned Kilifi, and I just wanted to get your professional perspective on two things. Let us start with Kilifi and the cult. And one of the questions that one wonders, firstly, is how does one get to be Mackenzie? And then how do you get people to pretty much destroy themselves en masse the way they have? What are the factors that play into creating so toxic, like an outcome? And so, because I think we are all trying to figure this thing out, and we have all this manner of we're all trying to process it somehow. And I think people would benefit from also just getting, a standpoint like from a professional who is in that field.
Let me start by giving you a scary statement.
Yes.
And this is the statement. Anything that a human being has done, you are capable of doing.
Yes. I could be Mackenzie.
Yes. Anything that a human being has done. You said it.
The capacity is innate.
Is in us.
Yes.
Yeah. That human beings can do extremes of acts.
Yes.
Shocking. Human beings have been here before.
Yes.
In the past. Pointedly, it was during the Nazi Germany.
Yes.
Yeah. The Third Reich. Yeah. Human beings ask themselves questions. And to be honest, the Third Reich, sometimes you look at it as something that happened many years ago, but it's not.
I know, just some 70 odd years back.
It is less than 100 years. Yeah, less than 100 years. Human beings had thought that they were civilized. We had gone through this period of enlightenment in Europe. Guys had learned so many things. In fact, some of the theories we have now had already been talked about. You know, we had people like René Descartes, you know,
yes,
coming up with their theories, you know, all these philosophers and all scientists. Darwin had come and gone, Isaac Newton had come and gone, Einstein had come and gone.
Yes.
And then came Adolf Hitler.
Nazis, yes.
And the scale of atrocities that were committed in the Third Reich, the magnitude was so high that human beings asked themselves some psychological questions. How is it possible that a human being is capable of so much destruction? And so experiments were done. Experiments were done on normal human beings just picked from the streets who did not have any problem. They did not have mental illness, you know. They were just picked and experiments were done. It was found that one driving motive of negative human behavior is authority.
Fascinating. Mm-hmm.
That a human being, as long as they are under authority and they have been ordered to do something, they can actually do it. That it's very easy to order someone to kill. As long as you are a figure of authority for that person. And that was found to be one of the driving forces behind the destruction in Germany. Mm-hmm. The authority, yes, the idea of authority. Yes. You know, someone has commanded you to do it, so you do it. You know.
So you sort of cede agency. You
yes,
say it's not me.
Yes.
It is.
Yes, it's coming from there. All right. Obviously, also in social psychiatry and social psychology, there's the idea of humanity, how humans behave in a group. Yeah. So that is the second level. But the first level to do with the leader.
Yes.
What happens with this leader? You know, that they drive themselves to these levels of destruction of others, really. Sometimes themselves as well. Yeah. What truly happens? You know. Mm-hmm. So it can be illness.
Yes.
It can really be illness. Yeah. So you could be dealing with someone who is ill, and you want to listen to what they're saying. You know, when claims are being made that someone had a voice of somebody. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that this is not strictly a religious discussion. You know, but if that person came to my office, I would diagnose them with some illness. If this person is hearing voices, telling them this and that, you know, I would be able to. So for me, I'm saying it could be illness. Number two, it could be driven by some gain. Yes. For the leader, it could be driven by some gain, either power or material, and mostly material. So is this person gaining? So obviously if they are gaining, that's where the motive comes in and so on. And I know that these issues will be discussed in the courts. But most of the time when someone is accused of murder, they are brought for us to examine them.
Yes.
Their fitness to plead, yes. That's on one level. So that is just their mental state at that time when they come before the judge. But there is also insanity defense in law and in courts. But now we are changing it actually to be defense on account of mental illness. We are removing these insanity words from the because they're derogatory.
The stigma attached.
Yeah. So defense due to mental illness is a concept that is replacing insanity defense, where we look at the mens rea and actus reus. So mens rea is about, did you have the motive to do this, apart from just doing the act, which is actus reus. So it can be proven beyond reasonable doubt that you actually killed a person, but did you know what you're doing? And that is where mens rea comes in. So if you examine this leader, you could find that perhaps they have a mental illness. And if they don't have a mental illness, there could be a motive. If they don't have a motive and they don't have a mental illness, I don't know why they will do that.
So here's a question with respect to Mackenzie.
Yeah.
Suppose he has a mental illness. Suppose it's confirmed that, like he's a psychopath. Where does that leave everybody? How does one manage this situation? Like Hitler was possibly a psychopath, which is a mental illness. So should Hitler then have gotten away with what he did?
Okay.
I wonder how that usually would be processed. Like
yes. So also mental illness is not an excuse for all offenses, and someone can be convicted even if they have a mental illness. The mental illness must have something to do with the offense for you to be acquitted. And I think you need to bring a psychiatrist and a lawyer to have a more balanced discussion. but
yes,
even for mental illness, there are moments of lucidity when the person is okay, So you have to prove that those were not there and so on. Or at least you have to demonstrate if you are pleading insanity defense. So basically, it's a very complex
situation there.
Yeah,
yes.
for the judge when all these opinions are coming in. But again, the judge also has a responsibility. If someone is dangerous to the society, and it's on account of mental illness, should they be allowed to just come back to the society? Especially if it's a case where the mental illness is not possibly treatable. You have mental illnesses like those.
Then you commit them maybe to...
Yeah. So you need to keep them away from society also. So so it's a decision for the judge. They have different... If it's a mental illness, they have a number of options available to them. So there is absolute discharge where they are relieved, they are released. There is treatment order, so they are ordered to go for treatment, or they can be restrained,
Yes.
Yeah.
And now, what about the people who then put themselves in, like the victims of Mackenzie?
Yeah.
Again, what can make somebody get to that point where they are happy to starve themselves and their families to death?
Okay. Let me start by speaking like Freud.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Sigmund Freud is one of the most influential psychologists, psychiatrists, doctor of the last century. So for Sigmund Freud, he would look at it as human beings having a wish to return to childhood. Because childhood is such a happy period where you are protected, you are fed, you have very few worries or none. You are under the care of your dad. So human beings grow into adults but retain this wish to go back into childhood. All right?
Yes.
So when they find a charismatic leader, it's not always a religious leader, it could be a political leader. They want to shelter under that charismatic leader so that the leader, their leader decides for them, makes the decisions for them. provides for them. You see, that is the point, and it's a human psychological need. That's number one. So that is probably explains why people can subject themselves to that, And as you know, a father is not to be disobeyed. So you follow the instructions, So that this charismatic leader takes that role of a father to these people. Number two, there's an element of group dynamics that is created when these people are together. So the idea that you are now not responsible for what happens. Number two, there's a human need to conform to what is around you. If today you're in a group, where there are many people, and then a question is asked, does this glass have water or not? And 99% of the group there shouts, there is no water in this glass. You'll also say there's no water in that glass. It's called conformity.
Nyerere said wengi wape or something like that.
Yes. So when people are in a group, there's this element of conforming to the norms, to the rules, of the group, and no one will raise, an alternative voice because you don't want to be excommunicated. And human beings also have a deep need to belong to a family. Moving away from the psychological explanations, there is also the economic issues, So also, you may say one factor in these deaths is hopelessness due to poverty and disease. I think if you were to look at this, and we should look at it, but there's obviously some element of hopelessness that has come from poverty and disease, and this gentleman is the only person who is seeming to give you some hope and some answers. So that contributes.
Yeah. And is there a way, like now I'm sure all of us will be scratching our heads trying to figure a way of stopping this sort of thing from going on, especially now that many Kenyans are in the grip of one church after the other that is not, that people are being abused and misused in many of these places. And I think one of the things that's going to come up is how do you arm people? How do you make people not be so gullible? Are there any quick sort of pointers to a few things you can do to just be on the lookout?
Yeah. Well, I like the conversations that are going on, about regulation, self-regulation of religious organizations versus state regulation. Good things can come out of tragedies.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes.
So, but they only come out of tragedies. Good things can only come out of a tragedy if we learn.
If we take time
and change.
to learn, yes.
But if we do nothing, I can assure you this will happen again. It may be 10 years, it may be 20 years, but people will lose lives again. So if we can learn and make some steps to prevent, and I think there should be a conversation, Let's have a conversation. Religious leaders are important, and let them converse, with us professionals in mental health. Let us discuss what can be done to prevent this in the future. And I think government should take lead, in leading that effort, bringing these people together and having them discuss how can we prevent this from happening again. At population level, for me, I say populations can be educated, but one sure way of preventing these things from happening in the long term is empowering people, economically. Economically, so that people are out of poverty, so that people go to these places of cultism to look for miracles.
Yes.
So that people are not looking for miracles.
Yes.
This is a sign of hopelessness when people look for miracles. So that people are not looking for miracles. People know that, people understand that success will come from work. Let people know if they can see it and if they can be empowered in that way, then we can prevent this. Let us build hospitals so that I don't need to go to a preacher, a cult leader for a kidney disease.
Or malaria.
I
know, yes.
And mental illness. I don't have to go to someone, Mwambaji, you know. So, but if there's no hospital, where will I go? I'll have to go to that person. So, in the long term, that's what we must do.
Okay. So the other case that I thought has also caught the public imagination is Olivia Nasserian. I think you're aware of it. She stabbed her 2-year-old daughter very gruesomely. And I think from where I see it, I think it's just symptomatic of a bigger problem around relationships and how people are managing their relationships and such tragedies. So what is your general take around that?
Yeah, I've followed that story only on social media. Can you tell me what did she do after stabbing?
So after that, she actually then went ahead to eat body parts.
Did she harm herself?
No, she didn't.
She did not harm herself?
She didn't harm herself.
Okay.
So when she was arraigned in court yesterday, and she seemed fairly composed, but obviously the magistrate gave in orders that she be assessed before she can take a plea. But yes, so and I personally, I seem to see quite a bit of that now taking place. A lot of violence directed at children, and a lot of hopelessness really in relationships, which sometimes just erupts into insanity. So I don't know whether you have any take on that.
The relationship between a child and a parent is fairly straightforward. It is the parent providing and the child is simply receiving. Nothing is expected of the child. So it's not a two-way relationship where one can say that the child has failed in any way. So the child is generally considered innocent in a parent-child relationship. People have studied homicides. Why should a parent, kill their offspring? And it's important to know that there's no one simple reason why it happens. So there are a number of reasons why it can happen. One of the reasons is that it can happen when the parent is suicidal. So in this case, the parent is planning to kill herself or himself. So they kill the child and then kill themselves. So that is one instance. Another instance is for revenge. So when a partner kills the children to punish the other parent, it's also one of the cases of that kind of homicide. Then we have mental illness is also a possible cause of that kind of homicide. So basically, those are the scenarios. So it's good to look at them as possibilities, and people have studied these things really, and there is information as to the causes. So it's not, we can't draw a conclusion because we don't know the case. We've only interacted with it briefly, and we may not know
fully
what was going on.
Okay.
In that case. So it will be for the people who are responsible for investigations to do it thoroughly. And I always insist that such investigations, let them have a psychologist and even a psychiatrist to advise. Yes, because you could pick some elements of mental illness from, how the patient was behaving and so on. So the investigating people, should always want to incorporate a psychiatrist or a psychologist in the investigation. Okay. But we can never truly tell. However, we can also say that violence can also be a reflection within society and within the family setting, can also be a reflection of our mental problems, because if it comes to relationships, one of the pointers to good mental health is stable relationships. Being able to form and maintain relationships is one of the areas in which we say one has a good mental health. So if relationships are turning violent, then it's also important to think about the mental health of our people. Yeah.
So the other thing that I noticed about that case was, like in my case, I logged on to I was checking something on Twitter randomly in the morning yesterday, just trying to catch up with this and that.
Yep.
And then I find there's this reference to Kitengela. Kitengela is trending, and then I see this video. Initially, obviously, it's just this random. I hit on it, and then there's about 2 minutes worth of this very, very gory stuff going on. And so at the end of it, I think I spent maybe the next 1 hour or so just lost, just feeling really. Now, I assume that possibly half the nation accessed that video.
Yeah.
Over and above, well, I don't know what other really violent content guys are consuming.
I've not watched it, and I will not watch it.
So in fact, that's the thing I wanted to, because I thought after that I think there's probably a case to be made for us regulating the content we consume and what we also post online, regardless of, because firstly, at some point I was wondering to myself, whoever posted, what's the benefit of posting material like that online, other than it being you attracting a bit of attention to yourself, but I don't think people benefit much from it really.
It's extremely wrong.
Yeah.
It's extremely wrong. And for me, I always don't like the idea that we must always create laws for common sense things. If you understand that it will not be of any use sharing this information, it can cause someone distress.
Yes.
And I see people even sharing on WhatsApp groups.
Yes.
Even small groups, someone has shared there. I don't know if it's people trying to be heroes.
Surprisingly, yes. Because I even remember once, about 5 years ago, in our family WhatsApp group, somebody had shared this video of a girl, I don't know which country it was, but a girl was being killed. And the whole thing is there. And there's no explanation. There's just this random video that shows up in the WhatsApp group. And you're left with a shock of having viewed it, but with no meaningful way of processing what you just,
So the idea here is that what people should learn, and let us learn from the Western media. You see, look at the way Western media covers African stories. A lot of times the Western media will display a lot of violence in African conflicts.
Yes.
They'll show dead people, and they'll show blood and so on. But when the same happens in the West, they don't show us.
You don't see anything.
They don't show. They don't show the suffering. They don't show the blood. They don't show death in the West. There is a way in which even looking at such violence dehumanizes you. You devalue yourself as a human being. It reduces your value to yourself as a human being. And so it is just, let us just learn that it is risky. It's a negative behavior. Let us learn to love ourselves. It's part of self-hate, I think, for someone to post that. But even more risky is this. There's what we call copycat. Yeah. The moment you share this content, there's always someone who is in a similar situation. All right? There's a mother somewhere also who is stranded with a child for whatever reason. She may be in a very bad state of mind, you know. So once you share that, that's the moment you hear that there's another story.
Oh, yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
And even media should be very limited. Such a story should not be covered over and over again, you know. Talk about it once. It should not be the headline story. I don't want to open my TV, the first thing, there's a story, and then you air it for 3 days. I already know this story, you know.
Yes.
So don't make it headline, don't repeat it, don't show the details, don't show the blood and death, you know. Just report it. That goes for homicide, and it also goes for suicide. And where suicide is involved also, don't share the suicide note. It helps nobody.
Okay.
Don't share the suicide note. No, I don't read suicide notes.
Oh.
I will never read. I will never share.
Okay.
Yes.
Why would it does not provide closure or any such thing?
It is the worst thing you can do. Do not read a suicide note. Do not share it. It doesn't help you. The person is dead. That's
because then maybe you're guilt tripped and you're trying to rack your brain about what you could have done better. And it's not useful.
It's not useful because death comes from many factors. So you cannot be responsible.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Wow. Now, I know you had mentioned that we do need to wrap this up as fast as possible, and I do agree. Daktari, I want us to move to the theme of the mental health awareness campaign in May. Firstly, maybe just tell us a bit about, broadly, what it entails, the mental health awareness, what you're hoping to do over the month. And then now we discuss this bit about violence and mental health a bit, and then we can bring this to a close.
Okay. Yeah, so in the month of May, the Kenya Psychiatric Association will be leading a campaign to educate the public on the relationship between violence and mental health. Because of the realization, what we know is that mental illness can be a cause for violence, but it can also be the effect of violence. That's on that level of violence and mental health. And then people with mental illnesses, living with mental illnesses, also face violence. Yeah. So already those are three things you're talking about. So it is this. It's good. We want to try and educate people about the different aspects of violence as related to mental health and illness, with an aim of reducing levels of violence in our society, either through treatment and so on. You know, people finding where they can get help, and so basically that. So what is the question of what can we be able to prevent? How can we be able to prevent or reduce levels of violence? And the reason for this is that there have been many acts of violence in Kenya, especially over the last 1 year, that are generously reported in the media. So we want to try and address the many aspects of violence and mental health. Yes.
Okay, and how do you, during the month, what are some of the activities you're going to carry out? Okay,
so we will have public webinars that are open for all, where we'll have experts discussing, and victims or survivors discussing their experiences. We are going to have a campaign on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram. We'll be posting some key messages about what to do if you find yourself in a violent situation. If you are a survivor of violence, what must you do? We'll also be having a walk on 29th of May in Karura Forest. All members of the public are welcome. We'll also be doing public screening for mental health generally during that. We'll also have videos, produced just with content by some of our partners to educate the public. So we have all these activities, and we hope that we are hoping to do a media briefing about this And so we hope that the mainstream media will also organize their programs around our theme of violence and mental health, because in May, the whole world talks about mental health. We prefer to create our own theme in Kenya that is relevant to our situation. That's why we've gone ahead and created this one on violence and mental health.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that's important. I do agree that there is need to really address ourselves on the question of violence and mental health, and which brings me to the next thing. When we say violence, we often think about violence very simple, sort of tunnel vision. It's a guy punching you in the face, or someone taking a gun and shooting another one.
Yeah.
What is violence? Is that what you have in mind? Is that the sum total of what you're addressing yourself to, or is it more nuanced than that?
Yeah. So now violence, previously obviously it was defined as physical injury.
Yes.
An act that leads to physical injury, but now the definition is an act that can lead to physical or psychological injury. So that is what the violence is. Obviously, we have forms of violence that can lead to both physical and psychological. But we obviously know that violence can be physical. So there is this category also that we call sexual violence. Yeah, and then we have now, which is almost purely emotional abuse. So we have sexual abuse, physical abuse, and physical, emotional, sexual abuse. So those are like the major sort of categories around violence.
So if you're talking about the physical violence, that one is really easy to get.
Yeah.
I think things get a bit complicated for people when you're talking about emotional abuse as a species of violence. Would you want to just elaborate on that, or maybe give an example or two?
Yeah. Emotional abuse. Emotional abuse can itself be verbal,
Yes.
Yeah. So you can be in an environment where someone is insulting you or threatening you, threatening your life and so on. So, and also you can be in a place where the violence is a bit subtle. So there's what you call financial abuse. So someone can withhold money from you.
Yes.
So you hear spouses talking about being in a relationship where the other spouse does not help at all. And maybe it could be a situation where one spouse is not working at all, so the other spouse does not provide now, and they're the only breadwinner in that situation. So there can be that element of, there's no violence physically, or other forms, but there's that
But you're going mad.
Yeah, aspect of abuse. Also what people call gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse. Because in gaslighting is where someone, mistreats you to an extent that you doubt your own mental wellness, or they push you towards that. So it can be very subtle, it can be at the workplace, and so on. So those are the main forms of emotional aspects of abuse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think sexual violence is also, again, when we think about sexual violence, sometimes I think rape takes most of the attention.
Yeah.
But I think there are more subtle forms of sexual violence, isn't it?
Yes. One of them is stalking. Yeah, stalking. So, stalking really, those who have looked at it, they find that sometimes it can even lead to physical violence. Yeah. So where a gentleman is interested in a lady who is beautiful, but he has no skills to approach the
Hannah, like they say, Hannah Misari.
Yeah, he lacks the skills.
Yeah.
So what does this gentleman do? He just follows this young lady going to work sits outside the workplace after evening. The lady comes from the office. He does not say hi or anything. He follows her to her home and stays there for some time. So that's an example of stalking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So stalking, can be a form, and then obviously now you have this form of stalking where someone sends you messages and so on, and even gifts, that are not requested or wanted. So all those can be more subtle forms of sexual abuse, and they're difficult to deal with because sometimes there's no clear cut. Even our system is more accustomed to physical. Where's the injury? Yeah, but if you explain such, but it causes a lot of harm. And it can lead someone to develop even depression, or it can lead to suicide. So it's very, very dangerous.
Yes.
And so those are the other forms that we'll be highlighting.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So in terms of, you had said that maybe just to elaborate a bit, the violence can be the cause of mental illness.
Yes.
or it can also be caused by mental illness. Would you just highlight instances where violence is actually the cause? I know, for instance, there's a lot of talk about trauma lately. It's become like a thing on many people's lips. And then there's things like childhood trauma. I'm assuming that those would be the maybe classic cases where violence then becomes the cause of mental illness. Now, I know in our country, we also have a history of, in terms of our politics, is not the most gentle. And it does, create... I don't know. I think at a societal level, there's probably quite a bit of collective trauma there.
There's a lot of distress.
And yes.
And Kenyan said it during the Mental Health Task Force report when the committee went around the country. They pointed out at the nature of politics as a cause for mental distress. And what we know that such a distress can also lead to illness. And honestly, even studies have been done about Kenya's economic growth from independence. Yeah, so we always have these dips around election time or when there's a political upheaval. So our politics has been on the edge. If you read the book about Kenya's history, there's a book about the history of Kenya. I don't remember the writer. I think it's Hornsby. This book, if you read it, it's so relatable, you may think it was written in 2017 or 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, because we've always been very antagonistic nature in our politics, which obviously creates strife and sometimes boils over to violence. So it's true that the nature of our politics is also there. And right from home, due to Freud's work, people appreciate now that childhood is a serious influencer of personality and a person's wellness in adulthood. So if you grow up in a very violent home, it will affect your mental health later. You may develop depression or anxiety due to that. Now, there's this debate in terms of violence leading to mental illness. There's this debate around corporal punishment in schools.
Yes.
Corporal punishment in schools.
Did you see
that? Is it harmful or useful?
Did you see that kid in Kisii who was beaten half to death by the teachers?
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, so it and then it was not one teacher.
Yeah.
And the kid is like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, young kid.
Yes.
He had to be hospitalized. And I was just wondering what was going on with the teachers. But, I mean, that's also just an aside, because I don't think that's what corporal...
This is a very important discussion on violence in schools.
Yes.
You know, once you go to school, authority shifts from the parent to the teacher.
Yes.
The teacher is now your parent, so to say. In some instances, you are locked up in a compound, which we now call boarding school, which is a prison. which is and we went through boarding schools, and from day one, we could write in places that this number of days to leave the prison. 110 days to leave the prison, right on opening day.
Yes.
So you are locked up there, and then now you have these issues of teachers and corporal punishment. We, as the Kenya Psychiatric Association, I like talking about things we have a position on. We have a position on school mental health, and one of the items on that position is on corporal punishment, and our position is it should be abolished. It's against the law. It's against protocols that even Kenya has signed, rights of the African child. It is in the African Charter on the rights of the child. Yeah, it's even at the UN level. It is wrong to punish someone by causing bodily harm. Slapping, caning, and all that. It is wrong. And as KPA, we say that corporal punishment should be abolished. Don't tell me that because you turned out right, and so we should continue with it, And who says you turned out right?
my sentiment exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we turned out right. I think there are many people who are struggling with their lives now. Mm. They probably don't even know where the struggle came from, but possibly
it came from abuse, physical abuse in school, called corporal punishment.
Okay.
There's no reason, and let me say, even more seriously, this should be criminalized. I mean, someone should be arrested. You cannot punish someone because they failed a biology question or a maths question or a physics question. You cannot. It should never happen, because human intelligence varies from person to person.
Yeah, and that was very commonplace.
It was the commonest reason for punishment.
Indeed, that you're not performing well in class. Yeah, we would get whacked on the head. Sometimes we'd be told to spread your hands. Sometimes you lie down, and I know. So that's the question again about corporal punishment.
Yes.
So you have your schools trying to abolish corporal punishment.
Yes.
And then you have the parents saying, "Chapa huyo mtoto," on the side. What do you make of that?
I think it's a decision that should even happen at the home level. I think parents should discuss. And as we said, that we continue to learn more about the human brain and the human person, what is good and what is bad for them. When we were living in ignorance as humanity about the effects of corporal punishment, people were punished, and we thought that was the only way. But now we know it is harmful. So even parents should discuss, when discussing about methods of punishing their children, corporal aspects of punishment should be removed at the family level, so that you don't find a parent who is urging on the teacher or trying to ask the teacher to punish their
children.
Child.
Yes. Okay. Now, so in terms of, then there's the other side, which you also addressed. There is mental health being the cause of violence. And how do we manage that? Would you just take a few minutes to just elaborate on best practices around that?
So, there is a misconception that all violence is caused by someone with a mental illness. There's a misconception. There's a misconception that homicides are caused by people with mental illness. A misconception out there. Why is it there? This misconception is there because the moment someone with a mental illness engages in violence or homicide or murder, it is over-reported in media. So that association has been created, that violence is a result of mental illness. But what do we know? what we know is that only a small percentage of violent acts are as a result of mental illness. There are other factors that cause violence. It has been studied that only about 5% of homicides are caused by people, for example, with psychosis, which is the serious mental illness likely to lead to violence. But taken as a whole, most of these violent acts are committed by people without mental illness. And when people are studied, those with mental illness and those without mental illness, it's found that factors are similar. The factors that lead to violence are similar in people with mental illness and those without mental illness. So it's not the illness. Such as what? There's now an idea that violence has a genetic component.
Oh.
Yeah. That actually part of the current studies is people trying to establish if someone is violent and they grew up in a violent place, is it because of genetics or modeling? Yeah. But all in all, we are moving towards knowing that genetics can play a role in someone's predisposition to violence. Obviously, modeling can also play a role. You learn from your parent, but it can also be genetic. Issues like substance use, So most violence is associated with some level of substance use, whether someone has a mental illness or they have no mental illness. A history of violence. So if someone committed violence, especially when they were younger, they are likely to commit violence again, later. So these are some of the factors that should be associated with violence and not just mental illness. Mental illness can be one of the factors, but many violent acts are not committed by people with mental illness. And some mental illnesses that can lead to violence are like schizophrenia, which affects a person's sense of reality. Interestingly, again, we know that most of this violence will be directed at people known to the patient, so family members or neighbors or friends, rather than strangers. So it's rare for someone with schizophrenia to attack a stranger. Conditions like so that is because of basically the person's mental state is out of keeping with the reality. For example, this person with schizophrenia may have a belief that this next person is has bewitched them. Bewitching is very common in like a part of history that we hear. So you've bewitched me, If someone is a bit educated, they may say you have a gun or something, So they may have these kinds of thoughts that can lead to violence. Another one is antisocial personality disorder. So this is a personality issue. It is something that has developed slowly over time. It's a person's pattern of reacting to the world that is very consistent. So for antisocial person, they have less of empathy. A lot of them break all rules, within society. They are basically going against the social drift. So they are likely to be violent. A lot of them end up in prison. So that's why there's antisocial personality disorder. In younger children, we call it conduct disorder. So you're likely to have violence. So I can mention those two.
Sorry, I just want a small clarification around that. So when somebody has a personality disorder, are they mentally ill?
Yes. Personality disorder is a mental illness.
Okay.
Although it is one of personality disorders, we have about 9-10 personality disorders. Personality disorders are those traits in people that have been seen to have a continuum with normality.
Yes.
All right. So introverts and extroverts, that's a good example.
So
that someone can be extremely extroverted, extremely introverted. Many people will be in between. So for these personality disorders, so there's an element of antisociality in people, but you find that at the end of the day, there are those who are extreme, on the extreme side of things.
Yes,
so they have a mental illness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to get an understanding of that.
Let me give you another one, very important. This one, people may be interested in it. It's called Othello Syndrome.
Sorry?
Othello Syndrome.
From Shakespeare.
Shakespeare, yes. That character.
Yes.
Othello Syndrome is also called pathological jealousy. Jealousy is the negative feeling that you have about something precious that you have because you fear losing it. So it's been seen that in spouses, we have those who are extremely jealous. They go to every extent to establish infidelity of their partner. They look for evidence, they don't find it, they look for it again and they don't find it. And at the end of the day, they are still convinced that this partner is unfaithful. So that's called pathological jealousy. It's seen most commonly in men.
I thought it was the reverse.
It can also be in women, but it's seen mostly in men.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes. Which sometimes would account for some of the violent murders.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Extremely. If anyone is in a situation where they think that their partner is pathologically jealous, they should leave that environment. If you don't leave,
you're likely to
most of the times
you'll be harmed.
We get in contact with these people when they're brought to hospital because the partner is dead and the person has been brought to the hospital for assessment. How do you live?
If there was this lady who was killed in Eldoret.
Yes.
I can't remember her name. Was she a medical student?
Yeah.
I think she was all the way in Eldoret. One would assume that there was significant distance between her and the guy.
Yes.
But he still took time he made very elaborate arrangement to follow her to Eldoret.
Yeah.
And so it sort of implies that sometimes once you get involved with this person, if you're not out of the country, they will probably pursue you anyway and harm you. It's possible.
Oh, well, I remember the Eldoret case, but I cannot comment as to whether the gentleman was suffering from pathological jealousy or something else.
Because it could be a number of things.
Yeah, it could be there are many different alternatives. But pathological jealousy will definitely be one of them. But the point is, the first instinct of a human being is to keep themselves safe and survive. You want to survive. You want to be alive. So if you are in a situation where your life is at risk, it's important to live and take all measures to protect yourself. Even if it means going offline for some time, even if it means involving the police.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, let me tell you, from my experience, some partners undergoing, who are in these situations, are in a very unbalanced power relationship. The partner is too powerful, and I fear for these people. If you depend on this person economically and everything, and you think he's too powerful, he'll get his way around even if you reported it, it becomes a very complex situation where even me as a doctor, I cannot help you, unless you empower yourself to be able to be free from that situation.
So, and there are times when some of these people might actually take steps to disempower you.
Yes.
They will, as part of the process of keeping you, manipulating you to stay with them.
Yes.
They'll probably remove this and, just slowly strip you of all, so that you are left at their mercy.
Yes, and there's pathological jealousy, but also we have other conditions that can affect relationships in that way. So we have narcissistic, for example, personality disorder, which people talk about a lot,
That one, in fact, narcissism has almost become like a byword for every
disagreement. Yeah, I think I think we are using narcissism and toxicity
in the same
things,
interchangeably.
Yeah, but narcissistic personality disorder is a mental disease. Is a mental illness.
Okay.
Yeah. So every human being has a bit of narcissism, self-love, and all that. But this to the extent that everyone else doesn't matter, and I can harm the other person as long as I gain something, and I have to be the center of attention, and I'm powerful and I'm rich, and I want to only associate with the powerful and the rich. These kind of thoughts and actions that accompany them are what constitutes narcissistic personality disorder.
And it's enduring.
So so in that case, there can be a complete disregard of the partner.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're caught in it, and you probably have no real way out.
Yeah.
Maybe you keep thinking, if you just did something, if I just did this hard enough, he might appreciate me or something.
Yes.
Wow.
So the narcissistic person is the center of the world to themselves.
Okay. Yes. Now, so in terms of violence, I suppose, what are some ways, again, very generally, and in which we can mitigate violence in our society, and violence meted at mental health, people who have mental health challenges. Generally speaking, what would you advise? How do you advise us to improve this situation?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's extremely complex, as you can see. So again, it will depend on what type of violence we are talking about. Yeah. It will depend on what type of violence that we're talking about, because if it is forms of violence like GBV, for example, it's about education, it's about deterrence also. We need laws that can protect people, and people can face consequences for their actions in cases of GBV. If it is violence that is and certain aspects can be about education, about cultural practices. So it has been said that one of the common causes of GBV is the belief, where men culturally believe that it is their responsibility to discipline their wives. So it's a belief that people have grown up. So if we can start educating ourselves and discussing that, no, that should not be the case, I think some of these cases will reduce. If it is and other cultural forms of violence is obviously FGM, and there's been a lot of discussion about it. But again, just continuing to know that it's a form of violence. And then if it is violence that is in law, we change these laws. If it's about corporal punishment, we reverse these laws and so on. There are many different aspects of violence that, are outside even mental health. As I said, only a small percentage of people with mental illness are
actually engage in violence. Yes, there are so many other factors.
Yes. And the violence due to political reasons, we know the causes and the mitigating factors. But people should know that their actions can lead to these mental health consequences. That knowledge is extremely important, that if you do this, workplace, for instance, and workplace tends to be a bit emotional in terms of the violence we see there. So again, even workplaces having mental health policies, I believe it can help. We want mental health friendly workplaces where people can get supported for their mental health issues, can come back to work and without discrimination, and also can find forms of referral, you can be referred. And then where mental illness is the cause of the violence, what we know is that treating the mental illness is the solution, to the violence, that people are treated early enough and who stay on their treatment will be less likely to commit violent acts.
Dr. I think this would be a good time to bring this to a close. I don't know whether you have any final remarks, about mental health generally, about violence and mental health. Perhaps you can also share with us any plans you may have as a person or also as part of the medical fraternity with regard to mental health, and just personally. And then we wrap it up.
Okay. So the biggest problem that affects mental health and persons living with mental illness is our attitude as the society. That remains the biggest problem. The idea that we retain these older explanations of mental illness. You go to some countries, some of these explanations were abandoned 200 years ago. The idea of spirits and curses and all this. So, stigma is the one thing that we must tackle as a society. And this is how I would like people to think about mental illness. Anybody can suffer from mental illness. Anybody. I can suffer from mental illness. I may be well today, but 1 week from now, I may suffer from a mental illness. Yeah? My brother may suffer from a mental illness. My parent might suffer from a mental illness. Mental illness is closer than we think. It is so close that every family has someone with a mental illness. If we are to be honest, every family has someone with mental illness. But what we must also understand is that mental illness can be treated. And that's what we should aim. We promote mental health. Those who are healthy, continue being healthy. Avoid use of drugs. Sleep for 8 hours in a night. Find ways of coping with stress that are healthy. Be connected to people. Mtu ni watu. Be connected with people. Yes. Participate in some physical activity. Have good physical health. Good physical health equals good mental health. Have a form of spirituality. What brings purpose to your life? What gives you hope? Yeah. So have your own model of spirituality that is satisfying but safe for you. Promoting. Prevent. Prevention is for those who are at risk. So you want to prevent. If you are from a family where you have a relative, and that's almost all of us, that has a mental illness, there's some risk there, take precautionary measures. You can continuously assess yourself. The way you do medical checkups, come and do mental health assessments. We'll, for example, be doing one on 29th of May at Karura. You can come. It will be free by Chitayi Hospital Group and Kenya Psychiatric Association. Come, go through some tests. Test whether you have depression, whether you have anxiety. It may be a simple condition that is holding you back at work. Even easy boredom can be a sign of some mental issue that is subtle. Easy boredom. Start something and you stop. It can be a subtle form of a mental illness. So come and do assessment regularly. But importantly, know that if you have a mental illness, especially people with power, and even at the family level, are the ones whom we struggle with. Someone who is the breadwinner, and you get a mental illness, please know that there's treatment. If a loved one also has that mental illness, bring them for treatment. But let us prepare also, psychologically. Let us prepare. Just the way we take insurance for our cars, not because we will have an accident, but in case we have an accident. So let everyone at least tell themselves once in a while that it is possible I could suffer from a mental illness. If I suffer from a mental illness, please take me to Dr. Chitayi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that message is, but it's very simple. It's very, very clear. Yeah. And I think it is, it can't be gainsaid. I think there's a need for us to urgently embrace mental health by simply staying on the safe side when we can, but also appreciating that when we are not, there is help, and we should be open to seeking that help. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much. Thank you, Daktari. It was a fantastic conversation. I think very illuminating. I think even the crew is... Yes, so asante sana, Daktari. We hope to be able to also participate to the extent that we can in the mental health awareness campaign in May. And I think, generally speaking, this is something we'll be doing this all the time anyway. Yes. So maybe in future we might still invite you or some of your members to come and have conversations with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to a close of this episode with Dr. Chitayi. Dr. Chitayi's can be found at Chitayi Murabula. That is on his in social media. I think he has some interesting content there, including the difference between psychologists and psychiatrists. We invite you to also follow us on subscribe to our channel, follow us on our social media, and we promise that we will keep you interested and engaged on all mental health issues. My name is Charles Adede, and once again, thank you very, very much for tuning in. Bye-bye.